Back, everyone. Today, we're diving into the captivating world of medieval stained glass.
Oh, stained glass, those radiant windows that transform cathedrals into dazzling displays of light and color.
Right. But there's so much more than just decoration, and that's what we're going to explore today.
Absolutely. Each window holds a story, a piece of history, a testament to human creativity and skill.
And get this, we're going to be drawing on some amazing sources, like writings from a medieval monk, a modern stained glass company, even a YouTube video about the process.
It's like having whispers from the past guiding us as we uncover the secrets of these luminous masterpieces.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Stained glass sounds, well, kind of intimidating.
You know, all those intricate designs and vibrant colors, it can seem like a mystery.
Exactly. But trust me, it's actually more approachable than you think. So to kick things off, let's go back in time. Imagine yourself in medieval Europe.
A time of knights and castles, but also a time when most people couldn't read.
So how do they learn about biblical stories, about history? That's where stained glass comes in.
Precisely. These windows, especially the ones found in grand cathedrals like Notre Dame, became their visual encyclopedia.
So it's like these vibrant windows were their way of understanding everything.
Exactly. They were a visual narrative for a largely illiterate population, a window into their world, their beliefs, and their history.
And we can't forget, constructing these grand cathedrals was a massive undertaking. Some took over a century to build.
Oh, absolutely. It really shows you how important these visual narratives were to those communities.
Now let's talk about our guide from the past. Theophilus Presbyter, a German monk, and a true stained glass aficionado.
Oh, yes, Theophilus. His writings on diverse arts are like a treasure trove of knowledge about medieval techniques.
Okay, so he basically documented everything, from the raw materials to those intricate processes.
Precisely. He was meticulous in his observations, a true master of his craft.
So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Where does one even begin with making a stained glass window?
Well, surprisingly, it all starts with something quite simple: sand and potash.
Sand and potash, like the stuff we use for gardening today.
Not quite. We're talking about potash derived from wood ash, and Theophilus himself preferred beech wood for the most vibrant colors.
So they would melt this sand and beechwood ash mixture together. That sounds pretty straightforward.
It was the first step, but achieving those desired results required incredible skill, you see. The furnace conditions had to be just right.
So it wasn't just a matter of tossing things in a fire. It was like a delicate dance between heat and materials.
Exactly, and this is where the true artistry comes in. It wasn't just melting, but manipulating the process, temperatures, even the types of wood used.
Wow, so much thought went into it, even before the actual designing began.
Oh, absolutely. Each step, from the selection of materials to the final firing, was crucial in achieving those stunning colors and textures.
Speaking of colors, how did they get those incredible hues we see in medieval stained glass? Did they use, like, pigments like we do with paints today?
That's where it gets really fascinating. Instead of dyes or pigments, medieval artisans achieved color by adding powdered metals to the molten glass.
Powdered metals? That sounds a bit dangerous. And how did they know which metals created which colors?
It was a highly specialized craft, requiring a deep understanding of chemistry and the properties of different metals.
So it wasn't just art, it was science too.
Precisely. By carefully controlling the furnace conditions and the oxidation states of iron and manganese present in the wood ash, they could create a range of colors, from yellows and ambers to greens, blues, even purples.
That's incredible. So they were basically manipulating the elements to unlock those hidden colors.
Exactly. And here's something even more fascinating. They discovered that specific hues could vary depending on the soil chemistry and climate where the wood was sourced.
Whoa, so even the environment played a role in the artistry. That means each window, with its unique blend of colors, is like a fingerprint of its geographical origin.
Absolutely. It's like each window carries a little piece of the landscape it came from.
Now, what about colors they couldn't achieve through this method? Did they have any other tricks up their sleeves?
They did. While the majority of medieval stained glass relied on this iron and manganese palette, they also used deliberately added colorants for specific hues.
Like what?
Well, for instance, copper oxides were used to create vibrant reds, blues, and greens.
So they had a whole toolbox of techniques to work with. It's amazing. But once they had this molten, colorful glass, how did they go from a pool of liquid to those intricate designs we see in cathedrals?
Imagine a giant, colorful jigsaw puzzle. That's where it all began.
Okay, so they had all these pieces of colored glass. What did they do with them?
The first step involved carefully drawing the design on a wooden board. Then, skilled artisans would cut and arrange these pieces of glass, following that design meticulously.
Talk about precision. That must have been incredibly demanding work.
Oh, absolutely. And each piece was then connected using strips of lead called cames.
Lead cames. Why lead specifically?
Well, lead was chosen for its malleability, its ability to be molded into those intricate shapes to hold the glass pieces together. It provided both strength and flexibility essential for these large windows.
Makes sense. They needed a material that could adapt to all those twists and turns in the design. But what about the finer details? Did they paint on the glass to achieve those?
You're right on the mark. They use black enamel paint to add those intricate details, shadows, and outlines, further enhancing the visual narrative.
So it was like painting with glass A&E paint. That's incredible. They were true masters of their craft.
But with all this work going into a single window, how did they ensure it would stand the test of time, withstand the elements?
Preservation was key. They meticulously waterproofed the windows using putty. And finally, an iron frame was added for structural support and installation.
So that's how it all came together, from molten glass to those breathtaking windows we see today.
Exactly. It was labor of love, skill, and a deep understanding of both art and science.
And we've only just scratched the surface of this fascinating world. Oh, there's so much more to uncover. We haven't even talked about this technique called flashing, which they use to create even richer, more nuanced colors.
Flashing. I've heard of that. It sounds pretty cool.
Oh, it is. It involves layering different colored glasses to achieve a deeper, more vibrant effect.
Like a color sandwich.
Exactly. And we have actual examples of this technique in surviving windows, like the 15th century glass from the Pavia Carthusian monastery in Italy.
Wow, that's just mind-blowing. They were achieving these effects centuries ago.
And not just with two colors, they were experimenting with multiple layers to create those intricate hues.
They were true innovators. It makes you appreciate the dedication of those medieval craftspeople, constantly pushing the boundaries of their art.
Absolutely. And speaking of innovation, we can't forget about silver stain, a game changer that revolutionized stained glass in the 14th century.
Silver stain, that rings a bell, didn't allow them to create those vibrant yellows that were so difficult to achieve before.
Exactly. Before silver stain, creating a vibrant yellow required a very specific and challenging furnace environment.
And silver stain bypassed all that.
It did. It was a mixture of silver nitrate or silver sulfide combined with pipe clay, applied to the glass, then fired in a kiln.
Sounds almost alchemical, transforming silver into gold. Or at least the color of gold.
It's true. And it wasn't just about creating yellows. Silver stain also allowed for more detailed painting directly on the glass.
So they could achieve finer details like delicate hairlines or the subtle highlighting of canopy work. Right?
Precisely. Silver stain opened up a whole new world of artistic possibilities.
It's amazing to see how this one discovery revolutionized the entire craft.
And it shows that even in medieval times, there was a constant drive to innovate and push the boundaries of artistic expression.
From simple sand and ash to these incredibly complex techniques, it's a true testament to human ingenuity.
It is. And we haven't even touched on the symbolic meanings embedded within these windows or their social and political significance.
There's so much more to explore. I can't wait to dive deeper into those aspects in our next segment.
It's going to be fascinating to uncover those hidden layers of meaning and see how these windows reflected the world they were created in.
But for now, let's just take a moment to appreciate the journey we've taken. From the humble beginnings of sand and ash to those vibrant colors and intricate designs, the creation of medieval stained glass was a remarkable feat of artistry and technology.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that even in times without modern technology, human creativity and passion for beauty could create truly extraordinary works of art that continue to inspire us centuries later.
A perfect note to end on for now. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back to delve even deeper into this captivating world of medieval stained glass.
We'll be uncovering those stories whispered through light and color, so don't go anywhere. It really is incredible how those simple materials we talked about, the sand and ash, were transformed into such powerful works of art.
It's true. And you know what really gets me is the intention behind those windows. It seems like they were so much more than just decoration. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Remember, we're talking about a time when literacy was limited. So these windows, especially in those grand cathedrals like Notre Dame, served as visual guides to biblical stories and teachings.
So they were like a visual Bible, making those stories accessible to everyone, even those who couldn't read.
Exactly. They provided a visual language that went beyond the limitations of words. And you know what's amazing?
What's that?
It's the way that the interplay of light and color, the sheer scale and grandeur of those windows, created a truly immersive and emotionally resonant experience. It wasn't just about seeing the stories, it was about feeling them.
I get that, like being enveloped in the story itself. It's fascinating. But were there any specific techniques or elements they used to enhance that storytelling aspect?
Definitely. One that immediately comes to mind is the use of symbolism colors, for example, were carefully chosen to convey specific meanings, like blue often represented heaven.
Ah, makes sense. The color of the sky.
Exactly. While red symbolized Christ's sacrifice, green stood for growth and rebirth, and gold signified divinity.
So they weren't just pretty colors. They were like visual cues that added layers of meaning.
Precisely. Those colors would have been instantly recognizable to the medieval viewer, carrying deep religious and cultural significance.
It's like they were weaving a visual tapestry of meaning, using colors as threads to create a richer narrative. But do we know if everyone interpreted those symbols the same way, or was there room for individual interpretation?
That's a great question. While certain symbols held widely understood meanings, the interpretation of those images could also be influenced by an individual's own experiences and beliefs.
So it wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach to understanding. Each viewer could bring their own perspective to the table.
Exactly, and that's part of what makes these windows so fascinating. They invite us to look beyond the surface, engage with the stories, and consider how they might have resonated with people centuries ago.
And maybe even how they resonate with us today in our own very different worlds, like a bridge across time, connecting us through these shared stories. But let's shift gears for a bit and delve into the technical challenges they faced in creating these masterpieces. We talked about the basic materials and some techniques, but I'm curious about the specific hurdles they had to overcome.
Oh, there were plenty. One of the most significant was achieving consistent and vibrant colors in the glass itself. It wasn't as simple as just adding those powdered metals and hoping for the best.
Right, it sounds like there was a lot of trial and error involved.
Oh, absolutely. They were constantly experimenting, refining their techniques, and searching for new materials to achieve those desired colors.
Like what kind of challenges did they face with specific colors?
Well, for instance, early medieval glassmakers relied on cobalt to create blue, but it was expensive and often resulted in a dark, almost opaque color.
Not quite the vibrant blues we see in those iconic windows.
Exactly. It wasn't until the 13th century that they started using azurite, a type of copper ore, which produced those brighter, more translucent blues that we associate with stained glass.
Ah, so it was a process of continuous improvement and innovation. Fascinating. Did they have similar challenges with other colors?
Oh, definitely. Creating a true, vibrant red, for example, was one of the holy grails of medieval glassmaking.
Why was red so difficult to achieve? What made it such a challenge?
The traditional method involved using gold chloride, which, as you can imagine, was incredibly expensive. So the quest for a more affordable alternative led them to discover that copper, under very specific furnace conditions, could produce a stunning ruby red.
It's amazing how the same metal, copper, could create both blues and reds, depending on how it was treated.
It is. But achieving those specific furnace conditions was no easy feat. It required precise control over temperature, airflow, and even the type of wood used to fuel the furnace.
It sounds like a very delicate process with a lot of room for error.
Oh, there were definitely failed attempts along the way, but when they got it right, the results were just breathtaking.
You know, it's one thing to talk about these techniques, but to see them in action, to witness those vibrant colors and intricate designs firsthand, it must be truly awe-inspiring.
Oh, absolutely. Standing in a cathedral, bathed in the light streaming through those stained glass windows, it's like stepping into another world.
A world of color, light, and stories whispering through the glass. It gives me chills just thinking about it.
And it's easy to forget the physical challenges involved in creating those masterpieces. We marvel at their scale and complexity, but working with molten glass was inherently dangerous.
Right, they didn't have all the fancy safety equipment we have today.
Exactly. They relied on their skill, experience, and some basic tools to shape and manipulate this incredibly hot and unpredictable material.
It really speaks to their dedication and craftsmanship that they were able to create such breathtaking works of art under those conditions.
It does. And speaking of breathtaking works of art, I think it's time we talk about one of the most iconic elements of medieval stained glass, the rose window.
Ah, yes. The rose window, I've always been fascinated by them. Those massive circular windows that seem to dominate entire walls of cathedrals.
They're truly a sight to behold. Imagine a giant wheel of light bursting forth with vibrant colors and intricate designs. That's the essence of a rose window.
And why the name rose? Is it just a random name, or is there a deeper meaning behind it?
It's not random at all. The name comes from its resemblance to a blooming rose, with those petals radiating outward from a central point.
Ah, I see it now. And the rose itself held symbolic meaning, right, representing beauty, love, even the Virgin Mary in some cases.
Exactly. The design of a rose window was rarely arbitrary. It often incorporated complex tracery, that delicate stonework that divides the window into smaller sections.
So it's like a giant storybook, with each section telling its own mini narrative.
Precisely. And creating such intricate designs on such a massive scale was a testament to the skill and collaboration of so many talented individuals, from stone carvers to glass makers to stained glass artists.
A true symphony of crafts coming together to create something truly magnificent.
And the effect, when sunlight streams through those colored glass, is just mesmerizing. It's like the window itself comes alive, transforming the entire space.
I bet. Bathing the cathedral in a kaleidoscope of colors, it sounds magical. It makes you wonder what those medieval architects and craftspeople were thinking as they designed and created these windows.
A great question. Were they trying to simply impress with their skill, or was there a deeper purpose behind their creations? I believe it was a combination of both.
It's like they poured their hearts and souls into these creations, knowing that they would be admired and pondered for generations to come.
And their legacy certainly lives on, not just in those physical structures, but in the way they continue to inspire and amaze us even centuries later.
It's true. Those windows are a testament to human creativity and ingenuity. A reminder that even in times without modern technology, we could create truly extraordinary things.
Absolutely. And in our world today, with all its technology and distractions, those grand communal creations, they remind us of the power of collaboration, the beauty of shared experiences.
It's like they offer a glimpse into a different way of being, a time when people came together to create something truly lasting and meaningful.
I agree. They invite us to slow down, to contemplate, to connect with something larger than ourselves.
And before we move on, I have to ask, of all the narratives depicted in those windows, is there one that resonates with you the most?
I'm particularly drawn to the stories that highlight the human element, like the tale of the Good Samaritan.
Oh, the Good Samaritan, a classic story of compassion and helping those in need.
Exactly. And it's often depicted alongside scenes from the Old Testament, creating a connection between the Old and New covenants.
So it's not just a story about one individual, but about those universal values of love, compassion, and mercy.
Exactly. And what's even more striking is that these stories were told through light itself, a symbol of hope and enlightenment.
It's like the light itself becomes part of the story, illuminating not just the images, but also the hearts and minds of those who behold them.
That's the true magic of stained glass. It's not just about pretty pictures. It's about harnessing the power of light and color to connect with something deeper, something beyond ourselves.
What a beautiful way to put it. And it makes me wonder, what stories do we tell with light and color today? And how will those stories be preserved for future generations?
Such a profound question. Perhaps the answer lies not just in grand cathedrals and museums, but in those everyday spaces we inhabit, where we can use light and color to create beauty and tell stories that resonate with our own time.
I love that idea. It's like we can all be stained glass artists in our own way, weaving narratives of light and color into the fabric of our lives. But our exploration of medieval stained glass isn't over yet. There's one fascinating aspect we haven't touched on yet: how those windows reflected the social and political context of their time.
You're absolutely right. We've focused on the religious and artistic aspects, but these windows also offer valuable insights into the power dynamics and social hierarchies of medieval Europe.
It's like those windows weren't just reflecting light, they were reflecting society itself.
Precisely. And I'm eager to delve into that world with you and discover how stained glass became a mirror to the complexities of medieval life.
So these windows, these works of art, they were like subtle political commentators of their time.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And one of the ways they achieved this was through the depiction of different figures, you see.
Okay, so alongside the biblical characters, we'd find kings, queens, nobles, maybe even everyday folk.
Precisely. And the way they were portrayed, their clothing, their posture, even their size, it all spoke volumes about their social standing and those power dynamics at play.
I see. So it wasn't just random. Every detail was carefully chosen to convey a specific message.
Exactly. So, for example, size was a big indicator. Often, the more important a person was, the larger they appeared in the window.
Ah, so it's like a visual hierarchy The bigger you are, the more important you are.
Quite literally. And clothing played a significant role, too. Imagine those richly dressed nobles with their jewels and fine fabrics contrasting sharply with the simple garments of peasants.
Wow, a stark visual reminder of who held the power and wealth.
It's true. Even fashion choices had a deeper meaning in these narratives. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely. But did they ever get more, well, direct with their political messaging? I mean, did stained glass windows ever explicitly endorse specific rulers or events?
Oh, they did. It wasn't uncommon for rulers to commission windows depicting themselves, their families, or even their coats of arms.
Like a medieval form of propaganda, showcasing their lineage and legitimacy for all to see.
Precisely. It was a powerful way to assert their authority and influence public perception. And you know what?
What's that?
Some windows even went beyond that subtle symbolism and depicted specific historical events or political allegories.
Wow, so they weren't afraid to get involved in the political landscape.
Not at all. They were tools of communication, shaping public opinion, and sometimes even subtly challenging the status quo.
It's amazing how something so beautiful could also be so politically charged. It adds a whole new dimension to how we view these works of art.
It does, and it's a great reminder that art is never truly neutral. It always reflects the context in which it's created, influenced by the beliefs, values, and power structures of its time.
So when we admire a medieval stained glass window, we shouldn't just see pretty colors and designs. We should see a window into the past, a glimpse into the heart of a society.
That's beautifully said. And through that window, we can gain a deeper understanding not only of the past, but also of ourselves.
It's like connecting those historical dots to our present, seeing how those themes of power, identity, and the human condition are still relevant today.
It's true. Those stories from centuries ago, they still speak to us, offering insights into the complexities of human nature.
So before we wrap up this deep dive, I have one final question for you. Given all we've learned, what would you say is the most enduring legacy of medieval stained glass?
Well, for me, it's that power to illuminate not just spaces, but minds and hearts. Those windows are a testament to human creativity, ingenuity, and that enduring desire to express ourselves through beauty and storytelling.
Beautifully said. And it's a great reminder that even in our world today, filled with technology and instant gratification, there's still a place for that timeless magic of light, color, and the stories they tell.
Absolutely. So the next time you encounter a stained glass window, take a moment to truly appreciate it, look beyond those vibrant hues, and contemplate the stories whispering through the glass.
Let those stories transport you to another time, another world. And remember, they're not just about the past, they're about us, about our shared human experience.
And the enduring power of creativity to connect us across time and space.
What a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the world of medieval stained glass.
It's been my pleasure. And to all our listeners, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep letting those stories of light and color illuminate your world.